Big challenge for us as land managers is, first of all, we have a stewardship or a perpetual duty to the land. We always think of ourselves as being good stewards. We always want to improve the quality of the land, both in terms of its productivity and in terms of its environmental quality. But often we don't know quite what to do. We obviously know what to do with regards to our productive land, but we don't really understand what to do in the majority of cases with little pockets of non-productive land, and what can we do with those that will improve the biodiversity quality and the environmental quality, and maybe help the productive side of our industry a little bit more as well. So yeah, the understanding what to do is a real challenge actually. It's easy for us to, as I said, to know what to do when it comes to managing livestock and managing crops and even managing trees. But actually how we pull that all together in a biodiversity improvement element, matrix, is something that we really don't have a clear understanding of.
Biodiversity Net Gain is a way of us measuring the change in our habitat quality over time. So in England, Biodiversity Net Gain is now a mandatory part of the planning and development process, and it has been since February 2024. And it's something that the Scottish Government are considering and thinking about bringing in. So thinking about Biodiversity Net Gain and preparing for it is useful for Scottish farmers, land managers to do. Biodiversity Net Gain is one of an emerging suite of natural capital markets, and understanding how it works will help with future business planning and integrating novel funding streams into more core agricultural practices. The real benefits in baselining are around being able to have information to inform what you can do with the way that you're managing your land or your riparian zone or your river. Baselining isn't just beneficial for Biodiversity Net Gain, but it's beneficial for all of the other natural capital markets that are emerging. All of them require data and information for you to evidence any change or uplift that you're wanting to be trading in those markets. And it helps to inform landowners, land managers, landholders for their options, understanding what they've got at the moment and how they might improve it, and looking at the different funding mechanisms, both traditional agri-scheme and novel emerging markets that they can use to use the right funding to deliver what the landscape needs as well. The baseline data can help fill gaps in your understanding of the way that your land management is affecting the natural systems that weave through it, like riparian zones and rivers. So it could help identify opportunities to improve your practice, thinking about nutrient management, erosion, poaching from livestock near and in rivers, feeding stations and water management across the farm. And baselining can highlight where there are opportunities for uplift in those areas that could improve both the landscape resilience as well as your farm business resilience. We're just over a year into mandatory Biodiversity Net Gain in England. And what we've seen is from the moment that Biodiversity Net Gain became mandatory, there was an instant demand for the provision of units. And a lot of us weren't ready to service that demand. There's an opportunity with baselining early for you to develop opportunities, develop units that then could be traded for that early demand if Biodiversity Net Gain becomes mandatory in Scotland. With Biodiversity Net Gain in England, you're able to demonstrate uplift of a habitat quality from a point in time before Biodiversity Net Gain became mandatory. So in England, that's from January 2021. So those early adopters who are delivering improvements to habitat quality and riparian vegetation aren't being artificially penalised by a system that overvalues conversion of poor management into good management. The benefit to baselining before BNG comes in, if it does in Scotland, is that you can start managing and you won't be penalised for improving your management in advance of a scheme coming in. And at the same time, that prevents others unscrupulously gaming the system and artificially removing good quality habitat to then deliver uplift when a scheme does come in. Baselining can help with Biodiversity Net Gain, You can also use that information and information on water quality and soil quality, soil carbon, to look at other environmental markets, things like volumetric water benefit, things like grassland carbon codes, which are in development, water codes, which are in development, and other emerging environmental markets as well that maybe we haven't thought about yet. That data is going to be really valuable for both informing future land management approaches at the holding level and for justifying and evidencing changes that have been made and are delivering benefit to the wider landscape. You'd want to baseline a riparian zone so that you can understand the way that your current riparian system is contributing to the rest of your farm business, to the wider habitat, to natural processes, to keeping the river cool, providing the river with woody material to process, acting as a habitat for insects and birds and other animals that are interacting with your river. But also understand how you might be able to improve that riparian habitat and make it more resilient to both support in downstream flood risk, reducing downstream flood risk, improving the resilience of the natural systems that support your farm practices, and making sure that our habitats are connected and of high quality. So improving our broader landscape and broader natural processes. So in England with Biodiversity Net Gain, the way that you assess the riparian zone is through a methodology called a river condition assessment, and that's done in tandem with a terrestrial habitat survey, so a UK habitat survey. And what the river condition assessment looks at is the whole of the river cross section. So it looks at what the bank top land use and vegetation structure is. It looks at the shape of the face of the bank. It looks at what kind of species you have on that bank face. And it looks at the in-channel processes as well. So things to do with what we call geomorphology, the way that sediment moves and the shape of our rivers, and then how the vegetation is interacting with it. And other things that are important that you could be baselining with the riparian zone are the species diversity that are present. You could be measuring the carbon in the soil that's present and getting a baseline of that, and doing long-term monitoring of the quality of water that you have in the river channel, and how managing the riparian zone in different ways can influence that water quality. So for riparian biodiversity net gain, surveys need to be carried out by an accredited person, and there are accredited people all across Scotland in consultancies and in fisheries trusts, rivers trusts, who would be able to help with that baselining. And once you've got a baseline for your riparian zone, that information will be crucial in you understanding what you need to do to improve it. So you can use the baseline data to plan what is needed to generate uplift and generate biodiversity units as we trade with them in England. And what that looks like from a practical perspective, it's a range of things. So one of the most simple things for generating biodiversity net gain units on watercourses in the riparian zone is setting back agricultural production. And that might be, ideally, that's setting it back 10 metres from the bank top. But any incremental setting back of production from the riparian zone, from the riverbank, is beneficial to the riparian habitat. And that's supported by a national campaign that there is at the moment called Making Space for Water, which is a collaborative campaign between multiple environmental charities. And that describes the benefits of a rich riparian zone, which is structurally diverse, what we call a 3D buffer. So that's where we've got large trees all the way down to ground flora, a mix of everything from lichens through to large oak trees as we're stood underneath. And the benefit of that is multiple. For trees, it's providing shade to the river. For plants like this one over here, which is greater woodrush, this kind of plant is really great at catching the seeds of non-native invasive species, things like Himalayan balsam. And a good ground coverage of this prevents colonisation of some of those invasive species that cause future detriment by the way that they colonise and take over riparian habitats. Other things that you can do to generate biodiversity units on watercourses and in the riparian zone are improving that vegetation structure. That can either be done through planting, or it can be a natural succession. It could be a passive generation of biodiversity units. And once you've got that structure in place, as you do at this location, in this spot on the river, you're able to then bring that back into agricultural rotations of grazing, using low density herds and managing the grazing sensitively so that you're not disrupting too much the natural processes that have developed. At the more extreme end of generating river biodiversity units or riparian biodiversity net gain units, you're thinking about things where you're modifying the shape of the channel or features that are artificially in the channel, things like weirs or flood embankments or reinforced walls, and taking them out. So you're replacing them with a more natural riverbank profile, which is undulating and of different gradients, and you're allowing the river to function more naturally. So kick-starting those natural processes. And that's essentially what Biodiversity Net Gain is about. It's a method of changing your land management practice to restore natural processes, and you receiving a financial benefit for doing that because of the multiple benefits that it provides to wider society and the wider environment.
We're still trying to figure out our next steps here. I mean, obviously we need to baseline what is here. I think if we can understand what we've got and then understand the opportunity to improve and where we can target some of that improvement, then that's the first step. Obviously all of that comes at a cost, so we need to figure out how we're going to fund it, whether there's a productive return on it and it becomes a diversified income stream that actually complements the other income streams that we're trying to manage. Ultimately, we're a business, we're a land management business, and we've got to be profitable to be sustainable. So without that, we can do little projects, but they will be forgotten about and just fall by the wayside within a few years, and that's the risk. We want to make this an ongoing improvement program. I think the other thing was, we would like to incorporate our productive activities into the non-productive activities in the context of the environment. So if we can start doing some conservation grazing with cattle in an environment like this that helps that environment, then that's great. We can start using technology that's available now, such as no fencing collars, that will allow us, without the huge cost burden of trying to fence off every little piece of ground, to manage livestock through that. That's a real opportunity. So the technology improvements that we're seeing give us more scope. I think there's other things that we can probably pick up from the technology side of things, like the geospatial information, that satellite information, to actually try and understand how to, what things are going on. But at the moment, we're just farmers. We're trying to figure out what to do and how to do it, and so sort of big future in this, but we just have to, baby steps, one step at a time.